A little over a year ago, I made a video called Keeping Magic Secret, in which I discussed a few of the legitimate, non-conspiracy theorist reasons why a magic practitioner might wish to avoid talking about his or her practice. And as we saw, there were many reasons, but as we also saw, those reasons are very specific and not always present. A quick look at the Magick hashtag on any social media platform will reveal something that I'm sure I don't need to prove. People talk about magic a lot. So today I'd like to explore some of the best practices for those moments when talking about magic is in fact appropriate, just to ensure we don't end up generating misunderstanding, frustration, fear, or, I'm sorry, but let's be honest, straight up ridicule in our desire to share or to educate. First of all, there's this evident tendency among many, I hesitate to use the word practitioners here, let's say magic adjacent types, which is that first and foremost they wish to appear like magic practitioners. And for some reason they've decided that the way to do that is to look like the 90s camp icon Chris Angel. I don't know why. That look has somehow really appealed to a surprisingly large demographic. To me, it just seems like they've gone, wow, look at that properly functioning man. That's who I want to be. So dark and mysterious. If I get into magic, I'll have all the excuses I need to finally reach my final form, and finally I'll find someone who's willing to have a coffee with me. I'm sure you know the type. Not so much interested in doing the work necessary to establish an effective personal practice, just really good at finding the Halloween section of the dollar store and pouting grimly, but pouting nevertheless, on Instagram. This is a form of communication, a conscious decision to send out a message, not with words, but to everyone who looks at you. You want them to know, I have watched a YouTube video about magic, and I can tell you, if you'd seen the things I've seen or learnt what I've learnt about reptilians and the Illuminati, you'd dress like this too. Okay, to those of you who might feel called out here by my hopefully not too unbearable tease, I'll say magic isn't a fashion statement. It's not a look. The magic practitioner's clothes are the clothes of a computer programmer, of a teacher, of an accountant, a novelist, or a production line factory worker, or a parent. They're the clothes of a firefighter or a chef. You may choose to wear particular clothes of a particular colour and description for a specific ritual, but then you won't go shopping for groceries in your ritual robes. So my first recommendation is that your clothes shouldn't necessarily be doing the talking for you. Let your words do that. Magic's complicated. You don't explain it with a horror movie merchandise t-shirt and a Sigillum Dei AMF patched to your gym bag. Alright, my next point is to pick your audience. When you first get into magic, there's this rush of adrenaline. You want to tell everyone about it, but not everyone wants to hear about it. How's that even possible, you say? How can anything in the world be more exciting than this deeply important and incredibly useful information? Surely everyone will want to know. Coincidentally, the exact same thought happens to be going through every evangelical Christian fundamentalist in the world right now. And in both cases, some people are at exactly the point in their lives when they're open to that kind of information. But most of the time, they're not. Now, as unthinking as many people seem in their day-to-day lives, the majority do at some point wonder what it's all about. How does it all work? Most of them are satisfied with the first answer they find. Some are content with the idea that it's impossible to know. And a tiny proportion actually dig deeper. But most have the conviction that they have an answer that they are at least sufficiently satisfied with. So when you reach out with information that conflicts with their model, the best you can hope for is that they'll think of you as harmlessly eccentric. However, less ideal outcomes are going to range from them thinking you're mentally unstable, which doesn't do you or the topic of magic any good, to being burnt at the stake, which is, well, even less desirable. So gauge your audience first and meet them where they are, which leads me to my next point about how you deliver information. There's this common misconception about teaching, which isn't only relevant when talking about teaching magic, by the way, but knowing this tip can help teach pretty much anything. It's a trick that some people discover intuitively if they're particularly talented teachers, but regardless of how you discover it, it's an easy bit of theory to incorporate once you know about it. Most people imagine that teaching is about giving someone information. Someone doesn't have the information they need, you give them the information that they need, and then they have the information that they need. For a very select few lucky people, this style of education works just fine. If you're one of those people who can just hear new information that's completely unrelated to what you already know about, and you can just take that information, make it your own, and this is suddenly something that you do know now, then I envy you greatly. For most of us common mortals, we need to have something to attach this new information to. Something already in our head. Previously existing knowledge that we can attach this new information to. Or at least compare it to say, oh, it's like this other thing I know about. When information is completely unrelated to anything that we previously know or believe, or any previous area of expertise, we either don't understand the information, and therefore it doesn't get processed or further incorporated into the body of the knowledge that we already have, or else it gets rejected as irrelevant and it doesn't connect in any way to our current model of the world. Let me give you an example that'll work for anyone who's not currently involved in quantum computer engineering. Here's a sentence from Wikipedia's page on quantum computing. See if you can keep your eyes open until the end of the sentence. Quantum algorithms that offer more than a polynomial speed-up over the best-known classical algorithm include Shor's algorithm for factoring and the related quantum algorithms for computing discrete logarithms, solving Pell's equation, and more generally, solving the hidden subgroup problem for abelian finite groups. Okay, so those of you who are still with me, well done. That was just one sentence. Do you remember anything about it? Anything it taught you? Now, unless you're a science major, in all likelihood, the best you've managed to extract from that sentence is that quantum computers use algorithms. That's a word you may have at least heard before, and there's a thing called a logarithm, which sounds a bit similar, and there's a thing that helps to solve an equation. That's something you maybe remember from high school. In other words, your brain was able to hold on to the parts of the sentence that it recognized from previous experience, and it just dumped the rest. It had no context for it. It didn't already contain any existing area of knowledge that this new knowledge could be appended to. Where to store this? How will it ever be relevant if it's so different from everything else that I've ever learnt that has proven to be relevant so far? And that's just how our brain works, apart from some very lucky exceptions. We learn by rearranging previously existing information. Learning from scratch in an area that you have nothing to relate the new knowledge to isn't impossible, but it takes a very great deal of motivation to succeed. So if the person you're talking to isn't specifically desperate to get information from you and willing to do whatever it takes to learn, spend sleepless nights trying to make sense of your cryptic phrases that only make sense in the context of all the rest of the magical knowledge you have, if they have even a tiny bit less motivation than that, you have to meet them at least halfway. Speak in metaphors that they can relate to. Give examples from the real world that you know that they have experience of. Keep jargon to a minimum. Jargon is a shortcut way of describing a concept that's already been understood. It's not a teaching tool. So talk about energy centers long before you talk about chakras. Talk about allowing another entity to take control of your body and thoughts long before you talk about invocation. Talk about prescriptive physical processes to work with energies and non-physical entities long before you mention rituals. This is true about talking to novices, of course, but it's also true of teaching people with experience, and actually even more so, because these are people who already have some knowledge and understanding. And they're going to be looking for clues within your speech that what you're saying to them is in line with what they already believe to be true. So if you want to introduce someone to the concepts of magic who is deeply steeped in a very narrow spectrum of, say, the Christian worldview, you will first have to meet them where they are, and from there broaden their understanding of what Christianity can encompass and grow from there. Starting off with, hey, there's this really cool form of Icelandic Seder that I'm currently into that really taps into the powers of the old Norse gods in ways I just hadn't expected. Well, that just isn't going to gather the enthusiasm you might have been hoping for. Right, so in that example, you can replace the Christian learner with whatever tradition you like. Trying to teach a Thelemite about the complications that come with a Neoplatonist worldview? Do it from within a Thelemic framework. Just be clear about what your goal is. Are you trying to share a helpful technique or even a worldview? Or are you trying to stamp out a previously existing one? If the new worldview you share is that good, it will replace the existing one in time. But if you present your information as being contradictory and competing with the listener's existing worldview, they will put up defenses and your teaching will go unheard. That's without mentioning what such a conversation will do to any trust that might exist between you. Actually, this is one of the reasons why 19th century and early 20th century magical concepts have taken root so firmly in our field of interest. So much progress has been made since those early days of the magical revival. So much new knowledge has surfaced. So much research into authentic, original sources. And yet people insist on sticking to those incomplete, poorly translated sources that were accessible to the founders of the Golden Dawn. Why is that? Well, those practitioners of the 19th and 20th centuries, the Samuel MacGregor Mathers and Crowleys and Gerald Gardners of this world, started their own journey from where most people in the West start their journey. The baseline of the popular Western spiritual narrative. The vanilla spirituality of the average Westerner. And so beginners can relate to that. And so that is what sticks. Which leads me to my final tip for today, which is to talk about things you feel confident that you understand. Again, it's easy to get so caught up in the excitement of all this knowledge that you forget that a little bit of knowledge around one interpretation of Kabbalah doesn't suddenly make you an expert on astral travel, and experiencing success with your first few tarot readings doesn't make you an authority on Rosicrucianism or Tantra or celestial and infernal hierarchies. Become comfortable admitting that there are some, and even probably many, areas of magical knowledge that you aren't, and likely never will be, an expert in. It's also okay not to dismiss it as nonsense just because it's not your specific field of expertise or interest. But that's a topic we've already covered and outside of the scope of this video. So there we are, that's it from me for this time. If you have any additional tips to share with the community, I really look forward to reading from you down in the comments section below. Or maybe you have some interesting anecdotes from times when you've successfully or unsuccessfully shared magical knowledge with other people, whoever they might have been, and how that went down. Let us know about that too. One way or another, if you've enjoyed the video, and if you haven't hit the like button yet, please do take a moment to do so, because that really helps these videos to reach a wider audience. And if you'd like to support my work further, then do check out the perks that members get by clicking on the join button or the link in the description. And speaking of members, let me just say a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart to all the members who keep this channel alive. I'm always incredibly humbled to see how many of you have decided that you like my work here enough to support me. It really means so much. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, then of course don't forget to hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell button if you'd like to see my videos more regularly on your YouTube homepage when a new one gets published. And thank you finally to every one of you who have made it to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and you got at least a tip or two that you can use in your own arsenal of communication strategies. Take care of yourself and of each other, and see you very soon with another video.